evening. I'm absolutely delighted and privileged to be speaking here tonight at the Games Development Conference. And just to give you a small bit of a background, I'm a PhD researcher in Cork, in University College Cork, in the area of female youth physical activity and sport participation. And I suppose I'm going to give you a bit of a snapshot of what the research is about and share some of the findings with you throughout this presentation. I'm also a qualified PE teacher and I lecture in sport education, so my passion really is, sport education and coach education. I'm involved in a lot of work with the LGFA, so I'm actually an ambassador for the Gaelic for Teens programme, which fits in nicely with what I'm going to talk about today. It's specific to girls. Even though it's specific to girls, it's quite relevant to boys too, because at the end of the day, we want more girls and boys to be playing and staying involved in Gaelic games. In my spare time, I play a bit of football with the Cork ladies. I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity. This is my 10th year playing ladies football with Cork. And I'm lucky to have 6 All-Ireland medals with a great bunch of girls as well. So, it's great to be still playing and being able to come up here and talk and share tonight about my research on ladies Gaelic football. The focus of this presentation is keeping them in the game. So again, it's all about, what can we do as coaches, as teachers, as club representatives to try and get more players, firstly, into the club, but then, most importantly, to stay involved in the club. I will talk a bit about my research, but just before that, I want to just bring to your attention a study that I was involved in. So I was actually a research assistant in one of Ireland's largest physical activity and sport participation studies recently. And we went around to schools all over Ireland to collect a bit of data and, I suppose, assess, how active kids are in Ireland, what they think about sport, what are the most popular sports, what are our kids in Ireland actually doing, and how are they feeling about sport. So we went around to all counties, Northern Ireland as well, both primary and post-primary. And I just want to bring to your attention that, in a positive note, that Gaelic Games is up there. So it's the top 3 most popular sports for children, primary school and post-primary school. So actually, Gaelic football is the most popular, followed by soccer and hurling and camogie is there. So that's a positive note. I wanted to bring that to your attention. However, we still have this issue, okay? And I know some of the previous speakers spoke about dropout rate. I'm sure Cathal had mentioned about, I think it's 49% at the moment. So although, we're here to promote Gaelic Games and we're here to, talk about all the positives, unfortunately there is a downside too. And it's our job to talk about this, and it's our job as coaches to do something about it in our clubs, because we can all make a difference and we can all make positive changes in our club to tackle this dropout rate. So recent research by Lidl for girls specifically in the Ladies Gaelic Football Association found that actually 1 in 2 young girls are dropping out of sport by the age of 13. Right, so that's actually kind of quite worrying. They're 3 times more likely to drop out than boys. Okay, so I suppose this is kind of where my research fits in, because what research is saying is that the age of 11 to 13 is the peak of sport participation, and coming into the adolescence period, we're seeing a really high kind of decline of both boys and girls. There are numerous factors, but at the same time, we kind of have to accept that, there actually is a big problem in Ireland and internationally with dropout. So what can we do to try and promote engagement and participation? So this brings me to talk a bit about my research. About 3 or 4 years ago, the LGFA contacted me and they proposed a PhD, which I'm kind of regretting, because I have to submit my 80,000 word thesis in the coming weeks. So that's not really the most exciting part of it. But I was delighted when they asked me to come on board because, we need to counteract this issue, particularly with girls. So they asked me to work with the Gaelic for Girls programme. And I'm not sure if some of you have heard of the Gaelic for Girls programme, but it is a 12-week national ladies Gaelic football run programme. So every year, any club in ladies football can apply for this programme. And 2 clubs in every county gets this programme in their club. So you have to apply. It's an application process. and it targets 8 to 12-year-old girls. So the whole aim of the programme is to try and, first of all, recruit more girls. So it kind of targets clubs that are, I suppose, maybe more rural clubs or clubs that are maybe struggling with numbers, to try and increase that participation for ladies football. And the whole, I suppose, the whole concept of it is to do it through fun and non-competitiveness, and introduce the girls to basic ladies Gaelic football skills with the hope that they will come join the club. So it's almost like a taster session. So the first 8 weeks, they come to the club an hour a week, and they have a taster of ladies football skills and drills in a fun, safe, enjoyable way. And at the end of the 12 weeks, they then can decide if they want to join and register with the club. So it's not kind of like forced upon them. They get a bit of a taster of ladies Gaelic football and a positive kind of introduction, per se, to ladies football. And again, the whole idea is to increase the participation levels. So where my research falls into it is that currently there's no evidence base behind ladies Gaelic football in Ireland at the moment. So the LGFA asked me to put an evidence base behind this programme in order to improve the programme. So take the programme, have a look at the programme, conduct some research, and based on my findings, maybe alter the programme and improve the programme so that it can be run on a national level so that more girls can get involved. So the Gaelic for Girls has 3 components. So it is the participatory component, the coach education component, and also the parental component, which sometimes is kind of often overlooked. So it's 3 components. Back in 2016, I went around to schools in Cork to get a current representative picture of where girls were at. So before I ran my intervention, I kind of said, right, okay, first of all, how active are girls? Second of all, what are their skills like? How are they able to move proficiently? And third of all, okay, what do they actually think about sport and about ladies football? So I kind of tackle the psychosocial element to ladies football. So, why do they like sport? What are the motivators? Why are they dropping out of sport? And I suppose, what can we do based on those findings to improve the programme? I went out to the schools, and the first thing we assessed was physical activity levels. Now, it wasn't that surprising, the results, because girls are less active than boys. Right? Research shows that at a national and international level. So the majority of the youth in the study were not actually meeting the minimum of 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity. So straight away, that was a worrying statistic, a worrying result, but not surprising. The second thing we found was when interviewed in focus groups, our research team interviewed numerous girls in schools around Cork, and when we posed them the question, why are you involved? Why do you like sport? Why do you play ladies football? Can anybody guess the main motivator? Yeah, so fun. Fun was the biggest motivator. I love doing it because it just makes me feel really happy. It's really enjoyable. The second biggest motivator that we found was that of friends. So the friendship element, the social element to ladies football. I love to socialise with everybody on the team. I like seeing my friends there. And it's important because competition, winning, they weren't up in the top 3 or 4. They were actually quite low. They were down the line. Okay, so we wanted to put ourselves in girls' shoes, and we wanted to ask them, why do you play? Right, so it does kind of boil back to the whole theme of this conference about the values and about the behaviours and the culture. At the end of the day, this is what girls want, and this is why girls are playing ladies football. On the contrary, when asked, okay, what's stopping you from playing ladies football? Is there anything in the way? Why would you drop out? Why would you drop out? So the first thing, ironically, is that of lack of enjoyment. So on one hand, you have girls loving football and wanting to play because they love it. Yet, on the other hand, the barriers was that of lack of enjoyment. They were bored, maybe not fulfilled from the training session. I just thought it was way too strict and it wasn't fun. Secondly, the competitiveness. Now, I know girls are very, very different to boys. Boys can be more competitive at nature, even at a young age. But for girls, this is actually a barrier. So competitiveness was a massive, I suppose, block in the way. Some people get a bit too competitive, and that kind of like makes you feel not that confident. The third thing was that of social comparison and friends. So again, ironically, first of all, they're coming because they want to be with their friends, yet at the same time, friends can actually be a barrier, particularly for girls. So that of like you'd see other people doing gooder, right? And you'd feel quite bad about yourself. So you have that side, that kind of social acceptance and the social comparison, which is quite relevant for boys too. Obviously, I'm speaking on a perspective from ladies and the Ladies Gaelic Football Association. Other barriers were that of negative relationships with coaches and teachers, and this kind of lack of support and lack of encouragement, which is a big thing. And like this is kind of something that, like, all of these really are things that we can control as coaches. You know, like it's fine to get the information, and research is fantastic, but you know, when it's put in front of you, like you should be kind of posing the question, what can you do as a coach? You know, look, these are the findings. This is what our children are, they're saying this to us. But what can you do? And I want you to think about that for the remainder of today and even for tomorrow. Like, you know, always kind of think, what can you do? Like, you're seeing all these results, yet you have the control. So control the controllables. If there's a really mean coach, I'd probably stop the sport because they'd give out to you. You feel that you're not able because they are giving out to you so much. So again, I think that's just important, you know, from a coaching perspective, that this is actually something that you can control. Another aspect of the programme we wanted to assess was that of fundamental movement skills, and Carmel had mentioned fundamental movement skills. What are they? They're the basic skills like running, skipping, hopping, jumping. These are basic skills that are the foundation of our sport specialisation in movement. So if kids don't actually have these basic skills, then like more than likely they're not really going to succeed, or not even succeed, but perform to the best of their ability later on in life. And I know Carmel had mentioned as well that kind of term of lifelong physical activity. So research actually shows that there's a positive correlation between fundamental movement skills. So if children are competent and if they feel good about themselves moving, so, and like you'd even notice this yourselves when you're in your club and your training sessions. If children are moving proficiently, then they're going to feel good about themselves. And when they feel good about themselves, they're going to more likely want to play and more likely want to kick the ball, hand pass the ball, strike the sliotar, because they feel good about themselves. You know, on the other hand, if kids are struggling, and they might be a bit embarrassed, and that whole social comparison comes back into it, then probably, you know, I'm not saying that they're not going to go on, but you know yourself, if you're not competent at something, if you're embarrassed, you're not really going to want to do it over and over and over again. So it's important to kind of note, you know, that these skills need to be practiced, that I think people just kind of overlook them, and, you know, particularly coaches. And first thing is that some coaches don't actually understand what they are and actually value them, in the sense that they're actually the foundation. So if you can picture a pyramid, like these fundamental movement skills should be at the bottom of the pyramid. This is the solid foundation. And, you know, as Carmel was saying also, that like we're teaching our kids to run almost before they're walking. And how do you expect them to become competent if they're not getting that opportunity? A concept called surplus safety is very relevant in this day and age. So, you know, when we were all younger, we were out and about and we were climbing trees, and I know I was anyway, jumping walls, and I used to come in destroyed every day. My mother couldn't buy me any white clothes because I was coming in destroyed, and I had that freedom of movement and that expression of like, oh, I'm going to just jump on the wall now, I'm going to just risk this now and jump off the wall, or I'm going to climb the tree and see what happens. Whereas nowadays, you know, it's, I suppose, with insurance and everything, schools you're not even allowed running in the playground, and I suppose with technology, kids aren't moving, right, as they should be. By the age of 10 years, kids should have mastered these fundamental movement skills by 10, right? And we just kind of almost take it for granted, or should we run around there? Have you actually watched your kids? Like, do you watch your kids when they train? Can they actually move? Are they getting the contralateral movement with their hands and their legs when they're running, when they're skipping, when they're jumping, even bouncing a ball? I've assessed over 800 kids in my research, and you'd be so surprised how kids just can't move. They can't get the basics right. So it's really important. As part of my study, I assessed 7 skills that were culturally relevant to ladies football. So these skills are relevant to ladies football, and I decided to focus on these skills. And what I found was after I assessed these, only 2% possessed complete mastery. Now, that's quite worrying because, as I have previously mentioned, research would suggest that by the age of 10 years, children should be proficient at these skills. This research is actually in alignment with other research in Ireland and on an international level too. And I suppose if there's anything you can take from this presentation, like just kind of highlight that, yes, like are my kids moving? Are they moving right? Are they able to move? Are they confident movers? So based on my results, low physical activity levels, low fundamental movement proficiency levels, and also the motivators and the barriers, I then implemented and designed an intervention as guided by the existing programme, whereby I could improve all of these variables, essentially. So each week, as part of the intervention, the girls came to the training session for an hour a week, and it was structured in a rotatory system, so it was actually a station-based approach and teaching games for understanding. So every 10 minutes, the girls were exposed to different activities, and they rotated around in the hour. So I kind of thought to myself, okay, how am I going to try maybe and further increase physical activity, as that was an issue? How am I going to try and incorporate and implement more fundamental movement skills in a fun manner? Because fun was what essentially is what the girls wanted. And, looking at the barriers, how could I try and kind of counteract the barriers? And how could I try eliminate to the best of my ability the barriers so that girls could actually enjoy the sessions, and it was a good opportunity for them to, I suppose, get a positive light of ladies football. So particularly on station 2 with the team challenges, I decided to focus on the psychosocial element, so that of values and that of increasing girls' self-esteem, the fun aspect, giving girls an opportunity to be with their friends, and also on the fundamental movement skills. So there was one specific station for fundamental movement skills and one for team challenges, specifically put into the intervention in order to counteract and in order to work on those findings. I would like to share with you one idea and concept that I came up with in my research. So I was sitting in my car one day and I was thinking about my intervention, and I was running the intervention at the time in a small club called Orlagh in Cork, and I kind of just got this mad notion. Ed Sheeran's song came on the radio, and I kind of thought to myself, geez, I actually just stopped in the car and I said, hold on a second. I said, how am I going to try and improve physical activity and fitness? How am I going to try and improve fundamental movement skills? How am I going to try and incorporate that social friendship aspect that girls wanted and, promote, I suppose, maximum participation, whereby they're not kind of comparing themselves to each other and that they're fully engaged in the process? And I got this mad notion and I said, geez, why don't I incorporate the skills into a ladies football dance? I was like, girls love to dance, and I was like, they love music, and I was like, it's fun, they're with their friends, their heart rate's going to be going. I was like, geez, I got this mad notion, and I rang my supervisor. At the time, I'd say he was like, what's going on, Orlagh? And I said, no, I just have this gut feeling, and I'm going to go ahead with it in my intervention. So off I went anyway, and I sent group messages out to parents saying, right, there's going to be ladies football dance session for half an hour before every session. Just text me back if you're interested. And I suppose there was a great response, and I decided to implement dance. So off I went anyway out to my back garden with my speaker, and I decided to choreograph a ladies football / fundamental movement skills dance to the song Galway Girl. It took a while, and I didn't kind of think, just how is this going to work? But also, in the process of that, I actually fell through my decking out the back and nearly broke my nose, or broke my leg and my nose. But I still decided to go ahead with it. And I'd like to share with you, because I think this video kind of captures the essence of what this conference is about. And I suppose it's kind of bringing everything back to the basics, like, you know, why are our children playing? And, you know, the fun and enjoyment and the intrinsic motivation, all these things came into play in the previous talks. And like what I felt was that, okay, I'm actually bringing all of this together into one dance and one movement dance. You know, the social element, the self-esteem, the maximum participation, whereby they each have a ball and they can actually explore their own freedom of movement. The confidence side to it, you know, building their competence and confidence, and self-expression as well. So at the end of the 8 weeks, when we were giving the girls their certificates of participation, I decided to invite the coaches and the parents of the girls to come into the hall and to watch this dance. And we decided to, you know what, I said, we've worked hard enough for it now, and I nearly broke my leg in the process, so do you know what, we're going to show it off now. So I'd like to share with you the dance. And like, again, for me, like, when you're looking at this dance, it's all about kind of thinking outside the box. And like, again, what can you do as a coach, like, to kind of think outside the box and, you know, implement things that kids actually really want and that they enjoy. So I hope you enjoy this video. One thing that I tried was a ladies' football dance. Basically, the whole reason behind it is fundamental movement skills and promoting the skills of ladies' football. So fundamental movement skills are the basic kind of skills like running, skipping, hopping, jumping. And what research is saying is that there's a direct link there to physical activity and participation. So in other words, if you're competent or if you're good at these skills, then you're more likely to stay in sport and stay physically active. So the whole purpose behind the dance was to get this kind of fun aspect, increasing the girls' self-confidence, increasing the girls' movement, I suppose, practicing them skills in order for them to become better, but also to have the fun aspect to it as well.
We've been training for the past couple of weeks, and we've been putting in a bit of extra work before training and during the week as well. It didn't take that long to learn, and well, it was kind of hard at the start. We got used to it. It went over all the skills, and it was to a really great song, and it was loads of fun.
But I suppose it's something different, and it's, again, the main thing is that they enjoy it. And you know, at the end of the day, we want more girls to stay in sport, and we want more girls to play ladies football. So we kind of have to think outside the box and say, okay, what do they actually really like? And that's what my research is doing as well, finding out, you know, why. Fun is the big motivator. Fun. That's all they'll say. Why do you play football? Fun. And that's, you know, how can you go about different ways to make ladies football. Thanks. I thought for a second there that you were going to get up and start dancing, but maybe I was being a bit too optimistic. So no, I just felt I wanted to share that because I thought it just captured like everything what this conference is about, and you know the main thing is just it's bringing it back to basics. Like this is essentially what girls want, and like I know it's girls specifically, but it's also applicable to boys too. And like it's something basic, and you know this mad notion that I thought of one day in the car, like it paid off to just take that risk. And I was kind of saying, geez, will it work? Like, it might look a bit stupid, but I was like, no, like, I'm actually going to go for this now, and I'm going to try it out, and I'm going to see what it's about. And, you know, as a result of this, I'm now developing this on a further level, and I'm hoping to target schools and clubs. And, you know, this is something that I'm passionate about. But, you know, my point is, first day, you know, sometimes we can have kind of a fixed mindset and be kind of like, oh, sure, look, I'll just do what I normally do now. And I'll just go down, we'll do a bit of backs and forwards, or we'll do this, and we might throw on a bit of music. But like, at the end of the day, just go outside your comfort zone and trial things out, because you'll never know. Like if I didn't decide to go outside my back garden that day and nearly fall through it at the same time, but I wouldn't have had this opportunity to, you know, promote physical activity and promote confidence, self-esteem, you know, like fundamental movement skills. And like, I think that's an important thing that, like, that's what it's about. At the end of the day, it's about how do you actually feel? I know Jim Ryan's father, Eamon Ryan, luckily enough, I was honoured for him to be my coach over the years with Cork. And I remember being at a talk before, and something that Eamon said really just stood to me. And he said, coaching is like a business. He said, if you think about it, he said, if you went into a restaurant or if you went into a hotel and you received a nice meal and the service was lovely and you had a grand all time and you felt good about yourself there and good vibes, everything like that, he said 9 times out of 10, you'll want to go back to that restaurant again, or you'll want to go back to that hotel. Why? Because, you know, you felt good there. And like, it comes back to that emotional, you know, the psychosocial side to it that's often overlooked. That if you as a coach can instill that, you know, take it one training session at a time, you know, remember that could be the only time our children are getting physical activity. That could be the only time our children are getting fundamental movement skills, practicing those skills. It could be the only time that they're actually releasing a bit of stress and anxiety. You know, so if they can leave that training session with a smile on their face, and if they feel good about themselves, you know, it doesn't matter if they didn't get the ball over the bar, it doesn't matter if they can't strike off their left hand. Like, that shouldn't really matter, because at the end of the day, it's value driven, and if they feel good about themselves intrinsically, they will want to come back. And like, that's your job done, essentially. You can't make them come, you can't make them enjoy it. You know, like, if you provide that platform as a coach and you provide that opportunity, then they will want to come back. So you have to have it focused on their needs and what they like. And every training session is going to be different, and every group is different. So there's no right or wrong answer, and there's no right or wrong coaching style. But at the end of the day, you know, we can make a difference. And like, I'd just like to pose that question to you, just to keep in mind for the rest of tonight and also for tomorrow. Like, what can we do as coaches, you know, club representatives, to try and promote participation and to reduce this dropout rate, this worrying dropout rate? Because at the end of the day, we can make a difference as coaches. You know, just come out of your comfort zone, you know, maybe try something different, but at the end of the day, we won't know unless we try. So thank you.